Good morning, everybody. If you'd please have a seat, we'll get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 18th, 2025 Pima County Election Integrity Commission meeting. Commissioner Cinnamon, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. District 1, Commissioner Cinnamon.
Present.
District 2, Commissioner DeLarge.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Mace. District 4 is vacant. District 5 is vacant. Libertarian Party, Commissioner Stewart.
Present.
I think the Green Party is somewhere in limbo in between, but soon to be Commissioner Wicks. Thank you for being here. Republican Party, Commissioner Strabela.
Here.
County Administrator, Tiana Smith.
Present.
Oh, I keep forgetting we only have one Smith again. And the Democratic Party, the Chair, Commissioner Bickle, is present. Director Hargrove.
Present.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the call to the public. Do we have anybody in the public that would like to address the commission? Seeing none. We have approval of the February 21st and the March 21st meeting summaries. Is there anybody that has any additions, deletions, corrections, comments?
They look good.
Then they stand approved as presented. Agenda items. Update on the Elections Department. Director Hargrove.
Okay, I think I can do that. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I think you turned it off.
It was red. Oh, is that?
Yeah, red is on.
Sorry. Counterintuitive.
She doesn't want me to be heard. So, good morning. So, of course, since the 2024 election, which was seemed like a eon ago now, I think everyone saw the after action report, basically where you don't have it now, but I think we sent it out to you guys. And so basically, I just kind of highlighted a few things from there, that it was definitely a successful, safe and secure election. Safety is our number one concern, so we're always looking at that. We had a robust media campaign, which I think helped us tremendously on election day, to avoid all the complaints that we could have gotten for the long lines. So people were aware of the two-car ballot and how long it may take. People were very, very patient on election day, so that was definitely a benefit to our department, but not something that we're ignoring. So we knew that there were lines, and so we will actually look into that and address that going forward. And, I just wanted to highlight a couple of lessons learned that vote center size actually matters, right? So the size of the vote center makes a difference. The size of that building where we're actually trying to hold an election, depending on the volume of people coming in, it really makes a difference. And I handed out a sheet, vote center, did I keep one for myself? So the vote center sheet, what is it?
Vote Center checklist.
Yeah, okay. So the vote center checklist, where we're using that now to reassess vote centers. I'm going in, taking a look at the vote centers, ensuring that the size that we think, the square footage we think that we have is there, that it's actually usable space, that we have enough outlets in the facility to actually do the job that we need to do now that we have all of the electronic equipment, that the outlets actually work. And so just taking this, it has an ADA, American Disability Act element to it, and a lot of other things that would be very helpful and beneficial to us going forward. So that is one of the priorities for this year. Kind of got derailed a little bit with the special election, but, we will continue to go through those vote centers and ensure that they are in good shape. Yes?
Question for both of you, actually. Who's actually in charge of selecting the vote center locations? Is it the recorder's office or the elections department?
Chair Bickle, technically it is the Board of Supervisors that have been somewhat delegated to the elections
I
department.
was going to say, we're not waiting on the Board of Supervisors.
So they do have to approve the locations.
Okay,
so.
they approve the locations,
They
but
do.
you're the ones that actually do the groundwork and determine that the issues raised on here are actually dealt with.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the other things that we're going to be looking at is the early ballot process, staffing, whether we can stagger that, figure out the best way to, it's hard to anticipate how many ballots are going to come in on a given day, but working with the recorder's office so that we can try to communicate a little bit better, maybe create a schedule so that we can let our early board workers know, hey, we're going to need you in the morning, or we're going to need you in the evening, or we may need 2 shifts. So we're looking at that, trying to determine how best to address that, as well as our receiving stations, ensuring that they are trained and everyone is aware of the job that they're supposed to be doing, updating the chain of custody forms where we actually have more time stamps on there, where the time where they actually receive the items at the receiving station and the time that the individuals, the troubleshooters who are returning in materials to the office, the time that they actually need to transport it to our office. So we can determine, okay, this vote center arrived at the receiving station at this time, but in the interim, they were waiting for others to show up, and the materials didn't actually leave the receiving station until this time, heading to the central office, so that it's a clear picture of start to finish when those items were received and when we received them in Central County. So that's kind of the highlight with the general election. Any questions about the general?
For the Commissioner Stradlin, Commissioner or Director Hargrove, how many vote centers do you believe you're going to open for the upcoming special election for the county?
Commissioner Stradlin, that's a great question, and that was actually on my list, but we're looking at 58 for the special election.
And do you have a date when you'll publish that list, or tentative date, I should say?
So we are hoping to wrap things up next week to have it up before the board on May 6th. And once it goes before the board and they approve it, we will publish the list.
Thank you.
So that's it for the general election and just kind of moving forward. I had the opportunity to present to the library board after the election and just kind of give them a high-level overview of, the library usage. And, this PowerPoint is just, showing from 2022 to 2024 how at one point, from 2022 where we were using libraries as polling places, but we were not using libraries for training. But as we move forward, 2022 going forward, we started to use more libraries as training facilities instead of using as many hotels and paying the larger fees. Now that may swap back somehow, but that's where we are now. Of course, libraries are not available for the special elections, so we will not be able to use libraries because they're having their reading program in July. It's just an odd time to have an election. And so they're having their reading program. So we will not be using libraries for polling places or for training for this July election, or the voting sites for this July election for that, just kind of went through, added the training days on the November 22 general election. So we added different training days. And the thing to keep in mind about the days of training, I didn't put down every training class, so each day encompasses at least 3 trainings, which means that those classes were about 30 people each. So you're looking at 90 people actually coming through the library. So these are bodies that actually came through those libraries that would not have come through probably had it not been for them attending training. So kind of a benefit to the library where people get to come in and kind of go, oh, okay, you know, they got some interesting stuff in here. My selling point there for them. And this is went on to March of 2024, where you can see those classes actually increase. And just continuing through, so I went through all of the elections and kind of just highlighted the usage of the library and how beneficial the libraries are to us. The important part of using libraries is that, you know, it is a place where people are comfortable going, they trust being in a library, so they're very comfortable being there. So it's definitely a benefit to us to be able to use libraries for training and polling places if they fit. Moving on. So
Question for you, Director.
Oh, sorry.
On your second to the last page, I believe we've got the November 2024 general election. If memory serves me correct, before we went to vote centers, we were doing precinct polling places. Our target number of voters per precinct polling place was between 400 and 500, just for efficiency's sake, and we're doing
How many did you say?
between 400 and 500 at a precinct polling location. We're looking at over 2,000, near 2,500 at some of these vote centers. Is that creating any unusual problems, unexpected volume? Were we looking for that much more traffic through the vote centers as opposed to polling locations?
Chair, yes, actually, that is the intent of a vote center, to accommodate more people. And even though we do not know how many people we may have coming through, but the intent is to be able to accommodate a large number of individuals coming through, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And moving on to this year, of course, so the president issued an executive order that encompasses a few things. I will only talk about voting equipment. I will not talk about voters and citizenship. I'll leave that to my partner here. But so the executive order basically it states that directs the EAC, the Elections Assistance Commission, to decertify any voting equipment that does not meet the Voluntary Voting Standards Guide 2.0. So I'm just going to refer to that as 2.0 going forward. And it indicated that any voting equipment that uses a barcode to count the ballot should be decertified and not used unless it is for someone who needs it for accessibility. So we do use the Express Vote ballot marking device, which has a barcode, but it also has the voters' selection is printed on the ballot. So it's not just a barcode or a QR code. It has the barcode, but the voters, you can actually read the ballot and see who the voter wanted to vote for. So it can be audited, basically. And then anyone who is not using voting equipment that meets those standards would not receive any federal grants or funding. You know, that's that. But the reality is there isn't any equipment in the United States that is certified to the 2.0 standards. None. So, not sure what that means or where that's going. The EAC has not done anything, has not mentioned anything. There's no correspondence coming from them about the executive order. And of course, they're in court. There are lots of lawsuits around it. But the good news for us is that we are upgrading to the DS 950s. We will have those purchased before June 30 this year, and the 950s are 2.0 ready, which means that as soon as the election systems, the SNS is certified for 2.0 standards, then they simply have to flip a switch software for us to be able to be using 2.0 certified equipment. The bad news is, if this goes forward and means anything, is that the express votes that we currently have are not 2.0 compatible. And we would have to purchase express vote 3s, so we would have to replace all of those in order to be in compliance if that actually happens. And we do use the express votes as a contingency plan on election day as well. So we do not use them just for accessibility. Anyone can vote on them. And if for some reason one of the printers goes down, we use the express votes as contingency on election day. Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. When I talked with Mr. Wisely earlier and you last month, the plan is to replace the 6 DS850s we have with 6 DS950s and keep 2 DS850s for purposes that to be determined. Are the DS850s that we will be keeping upgradable to VVSG 2.0?
Chair Bickle, no, they are not.
Okay, so they may turn out to be doorstops.
At some point, but I don't know how soon in the future that would be.
Okay, thank you.
Can I share about the express votes for early voting as well? Oh, wait.
Yes, okay.
Oh, wait, no, it's fine.
Okay, so let's see. There was a request from District 4 for basically discussion, direction about vote centers and cost savings. It was pulled from the last agenda. It will be on the May 6th agenda. And so in the interim, to prepare for that, I did submit information. I submitted information basically just kind of highlighting the transition from precincts to vote centers and the cost or cost savings that would be associated with that. Understanding that, yes, it was presented as a cost saving change, but that's not the only reason that change was necessary or is beneficial to the county. Vote centers allow individuals to vote anywhere, so we have significantly reduced provisional ballots for individuals who would show up in a precinct and they would not be registered there. If they voted there, they would have to vote a provisional ballot. So it significantly decreased the provisional ballots, as well as it allows us not to have to find 265 polling places to open and have 10 people show up to vote. And a lot of them, because until you go through a couple of elections and they are able to consolidate some of them, you really do not know, okay, where are these people going to show up? So we're saving money by not having all of those locations open, by not purchasing a bunch of ballots, and the list goes on. So it's convenient for the voter, and it saves a lot of money. And I can say from some of my research that I've been doing that at some of these vote centers, we have individuals voting from over 100 different precincts in one vote center. So it speaks to the fact that they're not just using them for convenience because they're close to their home precinct, but they're also using them for convenience because this is where they are during the day. So it is proved beneficial in that respect. But That being said, the projected savings that was presented, I believe in January, February of 2022, by the way, which is before I got here, was $289,484 per election. I believe that was the case. They approved, the Board of Supervisors approved 100 vote centers, and the projection was based on 100 vote centers. By the time we had our first election in August, we had 129 vote centers at implementation, which means that we had to then increase equipment as well as poll workers for that. Moving forward to 2024, we had consolidated and reduced that to 126 vote centers. So currently, not this election, the special election, but currently we have 126 vote centers. Where originally with the estimate, it started out at 100 vote centers. There were one-time implementation costs that were not accounted for. Were not astronomical, but that did kind of increase things. So instead of cost of net cost, because we had HAVA grant funds to purchase the equipment for implementation. So instead of a net cost of $495,204, the net cost was $587,653 for implementation. But that was those were one-time costs. The ongoing cost, of course, I just can't see it myself, net to $354,600. With the recorder's office paying the licensing fee for the initial 400 e-poll books that we purchased. The recorder's office actually owns those poll books. We keep them in our office, we program them, we use them on election day, but the recorder's office owns them. One of the numbers they had for the election precinct central software license and support was $200,900. That included $192,000 that for software that is not directly related to a vote center. So it's software that we would be using anyway, whether we had precincts or vote centers. So that cost, it would be reduced. So this is the proposed cost that was there. The data plan was $19,200. The consumables would be thermal paper, toner, printer toner, $72,500 with a total cost of $354,600. The actual cost for the recorder's office was $50,000 for the poll books. For Precinct Central, the actual cost is $15,625 for the licensing fee, whereas the proposed cost was $207,000. So the actual cost is $15,625. It is more because we purchased an additional 125 e-poll books that the elections office actually owns. We purchased additional 125. The data plan, that varies, so that's roughly somewhere around $47,000, which was more than what was projected. And the consumables is basically half of what was projected, because we now understand how to purchase those items and when we need to replace them. So that was kind of the overall gist of where I was going with that. Of course, polling places change, people change. The largest cost, of course, always is people. And going to the actual cost saving, so election pay, which would be poll workers, troubleshooters, central receiving, all of those one-day workers, decreased by $136,000 from the previous presidential election. Ballot costs has decreased significantly. So the county saved $653,000 during the 2024 primary and general elections in ballot costs. Because we are not printing ballots for every voter now. We have ballot on demand, which saves us a lot of money because we would be printing a lot of ballots Security-wise, I don't think that's the best option anyway, because all you do is shred them after the election. So you keep them and you shred them, and nothing happens with that. Polling place costs decreased by $7,400, and the overall election cost decrease is $295,000 for the 2 elections. So that's kind of a high-level overview of cost savings from changing from precincts to vote centers. Any questions?
Yes.
A significant portion of the numbers you were talking about there are dollars that would have been spent whether we went to vote centers or not, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, if we made the change from paper poll books to e-poll books, whether we were doing precinct polling places or whether we were doing vote centers, we'd still end up buying the software and the hardware to make that happen.
That is correct. The initial cost would definitely have been more, though, if we were going to go with, we could do it without data, the Cradle points, and submitting the data up to the cloud, and still have the ballot on demand printers, but we would have to have more printers because of the more precincts, which would be significantly higher cost. But other than that, yes, it would be the same.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So, kind of hard to follow all of the numbers in an oral presentation, but you had an initial projection of savings, and then your final one actually was not too different from that. I mean, it certainly wasn't in the opposite direction, which is the number one fear of planners everywhere, that, whoops, this savings measure didn't quite work out. But it was still substantial, even if it was a little bit less. Or was it more? The savings between the original projection and per election and what we're seeing now so far.
For the 2 elections, it made a little bit less, but those numbers fluctuate.
Mm-hmm. So
depending
close.
on the election, so yes, very close though.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Couple more things, Chair, and then I'll be done. Let's see. We're up to the current election, so the July 15th special election for Congressional District 7. Not a lot going on there. Actually, just a short update. The candidate filing date has passed. The Secretary of State's office will get the final list to us April 21st. But, you know, we have been able to download, staff has downloaded the candidates that have qualified from the Secretary of State's website, and they have begun programming the election. So they're already working on programming the election and designing the ballot for the election. We did mention polling places. We're hoping to have those finalized next week to be on the board's agenda on May 6th for approval, and then they will be published. We are interviewing and hiring intermittent temporary employees to work, and let's see. I think that's about it for the congressional district election. Yes, sir.
And I understand we have a 3rd election coming up this fall.
What's that?
Yes, we do. The recorder's office has a lot of elections, but yes. So the city of South Tucson is having a recall election on August 5th.
And it conveniently does not fit the timeline for any of the other elections.
Do you want me to answer?
Should you answer?
So the city of South Tucson August 5th election for our office is significant. It's on the consolidators, August and November dates that the city of Tucson chairs. And so for those who don't know, our office during the city of Tucson election, our only role is to provide data, voter registration data, and we signature verify their ballots. So they contract with us to do these things. So we already are going to be working on early ballots during that time. It's just a matter of logistics to separate these two elections. The city of South Tucson is around 2,200 voters currently. There is a registration deadline in, and this is just for July, or for August. They actually won't, it's just August, not November, yeah. So, so the full election will happen in August, because it's a nonpartisan election.
Okay. People are gonna get confused.
So yeah, lots of fun. So we currently have a RFP, a request for proposal, out for the new campaign finance software for candidates to file. And the RFP will go out, we're preparing one for election night reporting software, in our software, so that we can have our own election night reporting on our website, similar to what the state has.
As a candidate or former candidate who's used the current version of the software that we have, there was a rumor at one time that they were going to put everybody on the same software that the Secretary of State's office used. Is that still an option, or is that something that's kind of withered on the vine?
Chair Bickle, I can neither confirm nor deny that. I have not heard that rumor.
Okay, it's an old rumor.
So let me see. I think I am at the good news now. Just kind of update on security. We're focusing on office. We'll have active shooter training this month as well. We have implemented ways where we can communicate with staff throughout the office. So from the front office to the warehouse, we have radios, the three-way radios like walkie-talkies, where we can communicate now because we could not before. We'd have to walk back there and try to find someone or try to ring a phone and hope that they were near a phone. So we can now talk to each other. If there's an emergency or we need to get in touch with each other, we can provide alerts via our telephones now to alert people if there's an emergency or we need to evacuate the building. We can do that now with alerts. So we're focusing on that security as well. And last but not least, Pima County was recognized by the Election Assistance Commission. We won an award, a Clearinghouse Award, a Cleary Award, for training. So, and it's on our website, so you can go and read all of that, but we won an award for training and combining online training with in-person, hands-on training. So, staff developed a simulation class for the last election, and simulation being that actually it was operated like a vote center where the poll workers would come in, they would be assigned a role, whether it was inspector, marshal, an observer, somebody checking in, special situations. So every role that you could have in a vote center, and they go through 4 times changing and actually playing those roles. So simulation with that. And we have, of course, online training as well, where individuals can take online training and not have to actually do in-person training unless they're an inspector, because I require inspectors to do in-person. And so we won an award for that. And we did receive a honorable mention for security, innovation, and new tools in election security and technology for our election asset inventory management program, AIM. So we've been working with 10X, which is our global vendor, a lot, developing different things. So it all paid off. So that's the good news. And if you not have anything else, unless you have questions.
No, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Ms. Chief Deputy Recorder.
A couple of things. In preparing for the to what Director Hargrove spoke about. Our sites, we have increased our sites since Recorder Custis Kelly took office from about 8 to 9 sites to 18 in a regular federal, full, everyone's of it eligible statewide and federal election. For this election, we're planning 9 sites, but we're in the same uncomfortable position where the majority of sites that we use are libraries, and we don't have access to those. And so it's a little bit harder sell for a location to hand over their building or their meeting room or boardroom in some cases for an entire week to 3 weeks than it is for one day. But for the most part, we're in pretty good shape. Because school is out of session, we're looking at some cafeterias and we can rent those. The cost will go up, but this is a cost that we estimated when we sent our cost estimation to the Secretary of State for reimbursement. So there is a buffer in there, but this is an increased cost for our office. As far as the site workers, we have a survey that we send to all of our site workers in the different roles. We have people who work in our ballot processing facility processing ballots. We have couriers that are going and picking up ballots at sites. We have signature verifiers, and we have our ballot curing team, which does the actual calling to voters whose signatures we can't verify. It's a very labor-intensive role. That one is mostly led by our permanent staff, but we have some long-time intermittent staff that also do that. We also have workers who, we call them our early voting site workers, who work at our sites. And so we sent out a poll as soon as we found out about this election, and for the most part, our staffing is done. We actually have some additional staffing, and one of the things that we're implementing, we tried to implement it last year, but we just didn't have time with all the changes in voter registration rules and laws, to have different tiers of phone operators during the early voting period and on election day. And so we are going to be training additional staff in answering phones and just directing people to their earliest location, or their closest location, either an early voting site or on election day, a vote center. Any other calls asking about their voter registration record, are they eligible, why they didn't get a ballot, those types of questions will be transferred to the next level, the next tier of phone operator, which will be staffed by our permanent staff as well as some long-time intermittent staff. So we're really working to lower our call wait time, especially as something we saw in 2024. The issues with the ballots being delayed, and which I spoke about at the last meeting I attended, the ballots being delayed and the sort of, subsequent issues that happened from that with our online ballot request form. So hopefully we won't have one of those types of emergencies in this election, but you never know. And so that's our preparation. Like I said, we're in pretty good shape. It was a mad dash. We were already behind on our ballot packet design for this election because our printer gives us a E- of, we need this by this date, this by this date, and we were already behind. That's what we've really been madly working on, is making sure that all of the information that goes out to voters is very clear. And one major change that you all should know about is that so in the past we've had a carrier envelope for a voter to return their early ballot, and inside of that carrier, joining the majority of other counties in the state, that have gone to a single envelope for both. So it's both an affidavit envelope and a carrier envelope. And this is gonna cut down greatly on processing time, because basically what we're doing with approximately 400,000 ballots during that early voting period is milling and removing. And so this is going to be an educational campaign for the voters of Pima County. But we're confident that this small election that we're doing, smaller election, this year was the time to introduce this new format. Most of the counties, because we've been speaking about this on our statewide recorder calls, and all of the counties have said that there's really not been a concern with their voters. If anyone has a concern about having their signature on a ballot, which basically it's either dropped off in our office or it's put in your mailbox, and if you're uncomfortable with that, there are many places to just drop it to one of our early voting sites.
Is it safe to assume that for the CD7 election, all of the vote centers and early voting centers are in the district, or are some of them outside the district?
Early voting sites are all within the district.
Okay.
The ones that we're looking
And
at.
same for the general election?
And the general election, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We would probably keep the same sites if we can do that. There's one issue, possibly Yaqui tribe is having a little bit of an issue finding us a spot. If they can't find a spot for us, then we'll just choose one of the schools that's in that area that can serve that area.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have a question.
Commissioner DeLarge.
Isn't it true that some of CD7, that area goes up to Maricopa, or no?
Oh yes, there's 5 counties that CD7 is in, Pinal, Santa Cruz, Maricopa, us,
Cochise.
thank you. Oh, then I got one of those wrong then. Because there's only 5, I think. And so those are some of the things I wanted to talk about. I also wanted to share with you about the letters. You may have seen some articles about letters that we're sending voters right now. At the last meeting, I spoke about the what they're calling the MVD programming glitch, where around 200,000 voters around the state were, because of a programming error, were marked as, so in 1996 you had to show proof of citizenship to get a driver's license. So our voter registration databases interact with the MVD in order to, it becomes if someone has a driver's license and the MVD says they have shown citizenship or they're grandfathered, then they are, that is proof of citizenship to register to vote. But there was a little glitch in the programming, and I spoke about this last time, but it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of stress on the recorder's end, because for election, the Supreme Court ruled that this made folks should not have any changes made to their records. They should be able to vote. It was disenfranchised on their part, and it would be a massive disenfranchising event. And since then is the tricky part. And our Pima County attorney asserts that the ruling from the Supreme Court, Arizona Supreme Court, stands currently. The Secretary of State's office they've given guidance that our attorney disagrees with, and many of the other attorneys across the state. So unfortunately, we're in a situation where all the counties are doing something a little different. So I'll just share with you what we're doing. These affected voters are not, we're sending out letters notifying them. So we sent out 7,250 letters last Friday, informing folks about the issue and how they can provide proof of citizenship. We created a new email address for them to send copies. They can come into our office. 11,000 are going out today. We wanted to see how we could handle the phone volume, and it was fine. 11,000 more are going out today, and the remaining almost 11,000 will finish going out next Friday. At this time, there's no consequence for not giving proof of citizenship, because our attorneys feel very strongly that there's no legal basis to be able to change someone's record based on whether they send us the citizenship. Because of the discrepancy around the state, because some counties are deactivating voters or even canceling voters if they don't provide this proof within a certain period of time. But they're all doing it sort of arbitrary. There's nothing in statute that says that we can do these types of things. And so the Secretary of State's office has reached out to the Attorney General's office and requested a opinion that would have the force of law. And so while we wait, we're just trying to help voters at this point be able to vote a full ballot. So most of these voters are fully active, meaning that they can vote a full ballot. Their registrations are absolutely complete and they're going to stay that way until either a court decides. The legislature had a bill that's kind of dead in the water to address this situation, or the Attorney General gives an opinion.
Do any of these voters overlap the Real ID program?
Real ID is a valid proof of citizenship, so we can use that. And so when we received the list, my understanding of the events is this was discovered in September. The former Maricopa County recorder, Stephen Richer, filed a friendly lawsuit so that the courts would make a decision, because we were bumping up against a general election. And in the meantime, the Motor Vehicle Division was sending the list of voters to the Secretary of State's office. They spent some time trying to validate these voters through different means. Two more groups of voters came over, so they discussed, as the MVD was doing their audit, they were finding more of these affected voters. So we didn't get the list until January. And since January, our staff has been working, like our permanent staff of about 15 people, along with all of our other duties, have been going through every single voter and trying to find documented proof of citizenship. We did that for about 5% of the list of 30,000, or a little over 30,000 voters. So we're down to just under 30,000 voters now. So some of those, the ways that we were able to establish citizenship was doing another, what we call a HAVA check through the Motor Vehicle Division. Also through the SAVE database, which documents naturalized citizens, those types of things.
So if somebody was one of the affected voters but subsequently renewed their license and got a Real ID, they should be fine?
They should be fine, yes. Those were one of the ways that we could look at their license again. There was a little tag put on each of the affected voters that comes from the MVD. They changed the issue date to 1912 so that it would be identified by all of the counties, so we know any registration, driver's license or identification card that has that issue date of 1912 is one of the affected voters.
I have a question. Said Real ID is proof of U.S. citizenship?
Yes, they have to show a citizenship document to get a Real ID.
Because in my other security work, I have heard the opposite. So,
That was the whole purpose behind the program.
well, the whole purpose behind the program was for travel, and what I hear from my government sources is, government security folks, is it's, for travel and lawful presence as opposed to citizenship. Because when we're discussing ITAR, or international trafficking and arms regulations and export control, they don't accept that. They want a birth certificate or passport. So, got a contradiction I got to figure out. Because either I'm making people jump through hoops they don't have to, or we have a different problem.
Well, it cost me an extra $15, and I had to show them both my passport and my birth certificate if I had those documents in order to get a real ID. So it may just
Yeah,
be.
I did the same thing. And
It may just be a money-making program for the government. I don't know.
I have one other question. On the consolidating the carrier and affidavit envelope, does that mean that the signature is available on the outside of the envelope for anyone to see from mailbox to polling place?
Correct.
Okay.
I have one question. It's going back to the libraries. The library situation is only a problem if we are having election activities in July, is that?
For this particular time frame, but
Okay.
yes, it hasn't been a problem at any other time.
Okay, and we don't anticipate going forward that it's gonna be a problem unless we've got another July problem?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And the libraries have been amazing. They've been amazing partners. They work with us every election, jump through hoops, deal with voters, which is, I wouldn't wish that on anybody sometimes. They're amazing. And so, when they told us about this issue, we understood. We don't want to, for a lot of people, this reading program is a form of childcare. And we certainly wouldn't want to impact that. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. We have recently, actually two other things. We've recently purchased standalone drop boxes. So we are the last county in Arizona to have standalone drop boxes. We are starting off with 4 of them. We have yet to determine the exact locations, but we're looking at putting them, one at our downtown location, one at our east side location, which is our east side location is a strictly recording office, and it's too small to be a early voting site. However, we get a lot of ballot drop-offs there. And so this will give folks an opportunity to directly just deposit into the box. And then we're looking at one in cells for accessibility of the Thon Nation and potentially Aho as well for our far out areas in Pima County. We're working through the logistics of picking up ballots, that we have to ensure that we have people at each of these boxes at 7 p.m. on election night, because that's the last chance for anyone to deliver a ballot. But as I said, we are the last county in Arizona to have these ballot drop boxes, and we're really excited about it.
Question.
Yes.
Are any of these drop boxes going to be monitored in some manner?
They will all have video monitoring and fire retardant devices inside that can recognize smoke and dump a bunch of fire retardant on the ballots if needed. We have the benefit of all other 14 counties already having implemented these, and they've all shared their best practices with us. So we're really excited about what this allows for voters. Any other questions about that?
Not about that, but Given the turmoil in Washington,
Yes.
as far as money is concerned, does that have any impact on your moving?
No,
And when will that happen?
we aren't sure yet. Yeah, we're still working through those details. This surprise election, has sort of shifted our focus a little bit.
Okay.
But it's still moving forward. We're fully committed. It's kind of in, Pima County facilities' hands at this point, at this moment. I will say regarding what's happening in the federal government and the executive order regarding proof of citizenship for voter registration, that's something that Pima County or Arizona already requires. And so there won't be any substantial changes to how we operate based on this executive order. There is some concerns about getting rid of a federal voter registration form. I believe that's one of the provisions in the SAVE Act that passed the House already. In Arizona, we have a bifurcated voter registration system because the Supreme Court ruled that requiring proof of citizenship was a violation of the National Voting Rights Act. And so if you register to vote on a federal form, then you can vote in federal elections only. If you register to vote on a state form and provide documented proof of citizenship, then you can vote in all local and state elections as well. So that's something that is concerning. It will, we'll deal with it when it comes. It's a little hard to pivot as quickly as they want us to sometimes in terms of like reprogramming our equipment, our voter registration database. It can be a little bit challenging, as we saw in 2024 when the documentary proof of citizenship and residency was, the law 2492 was passed, and then there was a lawsuit, and then there was a ruling, and then there was an appeal, and things just were going back and forth, and it was really hard for us to move forward with those types of things. So hopefully we will be prepared for anything, but we don't know. As far as the executive order is concerned, as Director Hartgrove mentioned, it doesn't have the force of law. It's up to the EAC to determine what the policies are for federal elections. Arizona has joined, I think, 19 other states in a lawsuit against the federal government, and it's hard to know what's going to happen.
I have a question pertaining to the SAVE Act that passed the House. There was something, provision in there that said if they want you to show, well, pertaining to married women, and they want married women's ID to have the name that they had on their birth certificate versus their married name.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy, but is that true?
I don't know. I haven't actually read the SAVE Act. I've just read one article because we've been really busy preparing for this special election, but there was a provision about showing proof of citizenship, which is take a birth certificate. And in Pima County, we take a birth certificate if the name matches. We don't require secondary proof like a marriage license, the way it is in Arizona. So, and so I think a lot of states Arizona has some of the most, actually does have the most strict voter registration laws in the country. And so I think a lot of states are struggling with how to implement those things. But for us, if the majority of the name matches and the birth date matches, we take a birth certificate as proof. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions?
You said approximately 30,000 people were in Pima County affected by the MVD glitch.
Yes.
Do you have an actual number?
I don't.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was changing. We did a media release. It's up on our website. But we were still trying to validate the last 7,000. So I can get that number though. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm assuming that's covered agenda items A and B
Yes.
for both of you. Good enough, thank you. Agenda item C, discussion about the tabulation process provided by the Elections Department staff. Mr. Wisely.
Good morning. I am David Wisely. I am the tabulation supervisor at the Pima County Elections Department. Stop in anytime if you need clarification or greater detail on anything I mentioned. Before we get into tabulation, I'd like to briefly touch on testing. Prior to tabulation, our basic test is you mark a set of ballots with known values. You run that through your system. You check your results. They should match your expected results. If they don't, you fail. They have to match perfectly. We do this test 4 times before we start tabulation. The first test is our in-house test where we test every single oval that'll appear on every single ballot style. And we usually mark those multiple times because if you have 3 candidates and you mark them all once, how do you know which oval is giving them 1? So we may go candidate A gets 1, candidate B gets 2 marks, candidate 3 gets 3, so their results should be 1, 2, and 3. That's our in-house test. We do the same opportunity for our political parties. They can come in, mark a test deck, we'll run that through. It either should have identical results to their expectations, or we look at their expectations and the results and see if we can resolve any issue. Then we have an official logic and accuracy test. If the ballot contains contest at a state level or above, the Secretary of State's office will conduct the official logic and accuracy test. If they do not, we use our in-house test deck one more time in a formal setting to show that we're ready to go. On the first day of tabulation, we are required to run a pre-tabulation test to make sure from the date of our official logic and accuracy test, the system is still good, because that may have been a week before. So that morning we will run a test, we will zero the system. We have 3 reporting groups: early polls and provisionals. Any ballot cast prior to election day we consider early, so whether that's mail-in, walk-in early voting, or anything else, that will fall into the bin early voting. Technically on election day there's 2, but if you go in, you vote a regular, but that you just date in the box, we call that polls. But that's your election day ballot. If for any reason there was a discrepancy between your paperwork and your voter registration that requires you to do a provisional ballot, that's our 3rd category. So maybe you moved and didn't update your address on your driver's license, but you did on your voter registration. Those 2 records would not match. You'd be required to go through a provisional process. So when we run our tests, we set each of our 6 tabulation devices to those 3 reporting groups, 2 earlies, 2 polls, and 2 provisionals, so that we test the entire system that we will use for voting. Our tabulation devices are the DS850s, and I will refer to them as either DS 850 or 850s from now on. So, start of early voting, we will set those machines up early. Provisional in-house test deck, we will run our in-house test deck through exactly morning. We will compare the results. If they match exactly, then we will reset all the machines to early voting. And that basically the process there is we clear the software on the machine, we reload it with the current election, but set as early. If you have the opportunity to come and watch us work, you'll see each machine in the top corner says early, so I can identify as I walk back and forth that all the machines are set correctly. We will then bring in a rack of ballots, and it may have 1 to 3 batches in it. Now the batches are the recorder batch of files. They will generally be 5,000 to 6,000 ballots. When we get them from the recorder's office, they're in 10 to 12 trays of about 500 each. When our early board processes those, they put them in a sealed blue bag, each tray in a separate bag, so that rack that comes in generally has 20 bags on it. That's 2 batches, each batch containing about 10 bags. I'm throwing a lot at you, but that's how we keep it straight. When we bring it in, each bag have a label on it that tells it which batch it comes from, which bag it comes in, and those are numerically continuous. So this is the first bag process for the first batch, and at the end it may be 7,000 bags or whatever the last bag number is, so we can say by looking at the last bag, oh, we had X many bags of earlies. We bring the rack in, we give our political party observers the opportunity to take the batch information, bag number, and quantity in that bag down for their records. We will then distribute them among the different DS 850s, and then I've got my checklist so I don't stray too far from my well, prior to that. So we'll bring it in while the political party observers are taking on the documentation. We have switched over the machines to all be early voting machines. I will then have them produce a 0 report to say there is no ballots on any of those machines. The political parties will get the 0 reports. Also from the EMS, which is the election management system, where all of the data will be aggregated. We present a 0 report there. So we know before we start counting the first bag, everything is at 0. The political party observers have the opportunity to verify this. So once they have the 0 reports, once they've checked my bags and I distribute them, then the 850 operator can start processing a bag. First thing they do is they start their paperwork. They have to mark down from those labels what batch they're doing, what bag, how many ballots are in that bag, which election this is, the date, and that kind of stuff. They can then run the ballots through the DS 850. That starts with, we have joggers at the side that kind of tap them down so it's nice and pretty stacks they can put there. It'll run through the machines. The machines have 3 output bins. Well, before I do that, they run it through and then they'll compare the number of ballots run through the machine with their paperwork. If that doesn't match perfectly, they pull that off, kill that batch, run it through again because maybe they made a mistake. Because you can't put the whole batch in at one time. The hopper for loading it will only take about 200, 250, and you have 500, maybe a little more ballots in there. So you put it through a couple of times. I'll discuss the output bins now. There's 3 output bins, ones that are fully tabulated and or contain write-ins. The middle bin is one for that will need adjudication, and the top is anything the tabulator had problems processing, and that may be the corner of the ballot was torn so it can't be properly identified. Call them love letters. Somebody wrote, I tend to call them love letters, a note to the candidate on the ballot, and it crossed into these timing marks around the ballot, and the tabulator can't figure it out. Or they've spilled something on it, or the machine picking it up may have slipped a little bit, or it walked away from the wall of the machine. We run them back through to make sure it's not a loading error, so we'll reprocess that. In any of those steps, the operator may have put it in the wrong stack and got the wrong number. So if the numbers don't match correctly, the first time through we make them check. Because our early boards do a phenomenal job, that number is almost always right. If after the second pass there's a problem, we pull that batch and run it to our early boards to resolve whatever that issue it is. And as they're pulling ballots out of the envelope, maybe 2 stuck together and then missed 1. So we need to resolve and make sure we understand exactly every ballot that comes through our machine. Once that's done, so once their value matches that on the label, they can finish their paperwork. They mark down on the number of ballots from each bin. So the number of ballots that need physical duplication because the machine can't read it, the number of ballots that will go to adjudication, and the number of ballots that have been fully processed and may have a write-in. I only mention that because that requires one additional step of processing, so technically they're not fully processed. Once their paperwork is completed, they package the ballots. If it's fully processed and has write-ins, it goes in the bottom of this cardboard box. If it requires adjudication, it also goes in the cardboard box, but it's sleeved with a colored piece of paper so they're easy to find whenever we need them. So if somebody says, I want to compare all of those with the work you did, we can say, well, it's in box 20, it's third one down, we can get that sleeve for you. Those requiring physical duplication are also sleeved, but they're not put in the box because they have to go to a dupe board so that they can have the physical ballot in their hand and create a ballot that the machine will read. So if it's torn in half, they make a duplicate. They mark it with a unique number and original, and they mark the duplicate with a unique number, the same unique number, and the words dupe. So we can always bring them both together and say, these are all the ballots that we duplicated. Do you agree that we did the job correctly? And then we repeat that again for the next batch.
David,
Go ahead.
when you're doing physical duplication like that, representation, people,
Oh, yes, we have, our dupe board is of 2 different political parties. typically, one will read the ballot to the other who will mark it, then they'll swap them and say, and then read it and say, so that they can both can confirm the duplicate matches the original. We go one step further. We have a second dupe board of two different political parties. Check the first board's work. So you may make a batch of dupe, and this table makes a batch of dupes, and you'll trade your work and check it. And if you have to go on voter intent, and sometimes that's a little squishy. So they may say, why did you mark this one that way? And they'll explain it. Maybe they mark them with check marks the whole way through, and this one was just a line and not a check. Well, they may say, well, it looks like there may be a little line there, and so they have interesting discussions sometimes on what exactly was, but they to the best of their ability, duplicate it as exactly as they can. So we have so 4 sets of eyes have actually looked at this. At the end of the day, from each of the DS850s, we produce a ballot statistics report. That tells us simply the number of pieces of paper that went into the second or third bin. It does not report the top one. It says how many ballots have we processed for the day. We send, we check to see if the paperwork matches. So if this DS850 says they processed 5,001 from their paperwork, and their ballot statistics report says 5,001, we know everything there matches. Once everything matches, we send it over to our EMS, election management system, to aggregate the data from all the machines. We add up the ballot statistics report from each of the 6 850s to get a grand total. We check the grand total on our EMS. Those numbers should match exactly. Once they do, we can then start to close up for the day. We will run a backup so we know at any time we have a fire or the system crashes or something, we can take that back up and run someplace and start again from where we left off. We don't have, if we process for a week, we don't have to do that whole week's worth of work again. Those are the only reports we print, I will say with one exception, is the number of pieces of paper we run through the system. We do not produce anything with vote totals on it, with the exception of any hand count audit batches we do. I can describe that in detail later if you wish, but I'm just going to jump over hand count audit. So at the end of the day, we balance all of our totals, and then we clear the DS850s. The reason we clear them is so that the next morning when we start again, we can produce 0 reporters left on the machines and say, no, the moment our political party observers left, nobody has done anything with these machines. We produce a ballot statistics report from the EMS and say, when you left this room last night, we were at 5,001. This morning we were at 5,001. Nothing was counted. The next day runs pretty much the same as that one. We produce the 0 reports, the ballot statistic report. Each machine will run one batch at a time. after, and the political party observer can track our movements to say 10,000 ballots were brought into this room, 10,000 ballots were run, nothing new has come in. On election day, usually the first half of the day, we're just focusing on how well the polling places are running. We're not allowed to report any results till 8 p.m. on election night, with the caveat that if we have confirmed that the polls have closed before then, we can. But 8 o'clock on election night. What I like to do is make sure every scrap of paper that's been set for tabulation to be counted is counted before that time. So late afternoon, we will see if our early board has gotten any more ballots ready for us. We'll run that through so that all of the earlies that are available will be on that first upload at 8 o'clock that night. We then convert all the machines over to election day machines. We produce a 0 for our political parties observers. We have produced a ballot statistics report so they know at this point in time, all of the ballots that have been produced are in the early reporting group. From the polls, we will start running those. The first thing we do, I said, was run the 0 report. When they get a metal box with ballots in it, they start their paperwork. They mark down which precinct that came from. From the ballot report, they mark down how many ballots should be in that box. They run that. If there is any discrepancy, our election director or deputy director has to tell us if we can proceed. If that number does not match exactly with the polls, and they say that number, we can't resolve that number, we pull that box until they found a resolution for it, and then we can put it back in line. Go ahead.
To back up just a little bit, before you actually start doing the tabulation, there's a whole lot of work that goes on. How much time are you in that room by yourself?
Oh, never. There's a minimum of 2 people who have to be in that room at any time. To that point, we have split our passwords to log on to the EMS. I will have one part of it. A member of my team will have another part of the other part of it, and so we put in the username. Actually, they type their part first, then I type my part. We hit return, and then we can log into the machine to make any changes to the election or anything like that. But if I leave my, to say, hey, my water bottle in there, I can't go in and get it. I have to say, hey, can somebody come in with me? We'll just grab that. But yeah, we do not allow anyone to be in there by themselves. Anyone who's not election department employee has to sign in and out on a log there. So the political party observers routinely are the ones who fill up that log.
Can I ask about the observers?
Certainly.
So I assume the Democrats and the Republicans, what about Green Party observers?
The Green, Libertarian, and No Labels also have the ability to bring observers in. We only allow one observer from each party in there at a time. That's because of the limitations in space. We do occasionally allow 2 if we're training somebody, but that space can fill up pretty quick. But I strongly encourage the party chairs to designate someone so that they can report back and tell them how we do things.
Okay, great.
They just simply have, anyone who goes into that room has to be signed off on by the elections director. I'm not allowed to let anyone in unless she has given me permission. But that's simply a letter from the party chair to the election director saying, we are designating so-and-so as an observer who's able to see and what part of the building they would like to see. So I would also recommend that they say early board processing, adjudication, or observation, or give them observe all three.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
When does the tabulation of the early ballot start?
By law, it's allowed as soon as early voting begins, but of course we have nothing at that time. Generally speaking, we start about a week before the election.
Okay.
We do post it on our elections calendar, election event calendar. And we have a public observing hallway that anyone, whether they're affiliated with the party or not, can occupy that hallway and watch us process ballots. And if they tap on the last while I'm in there, I'll come out and talk to them and explain what we're doing. So people can also take advantage of that. And I'm more than willing to talk to people at any time.
Is it ever distracting? Like, are there a lot of people?
Oh, they're very large windows and I can see them. And on occasion we have a few people in there, but I'd say lately 99% of the time nobody's in there. I've had people threaten to come in on election night so that they could have a big party there. On election night, it's usually an AP reporter and a couple of other people. The news may come in, get a quick shot, and then go. Yeah. So there's plenty of space if people want to come by and observe what we do. So let me see where I am. So each ballot box that has come from a vote center, we process it through. One additional step we take is we print, the machine calls it batch level. I'm going to call it a vote center level, or results report from the DSA 50 at this time to put in the box with the ballots. This is in case that box of ballots is selected for the hand count audit. They need machine interpretation of those ballots to compare with what the humans decide at the hand count audit. So that's the only way we can have the machine interpretation in there for the machine results available for the hand count audit. So their last step after they run the ballots through, they print that results report, put it on top of the ballot so that we have it available in case that's selected, and then they finish their paperwork. Again, any that had a problem being processed, we have duplicators there that can create a duplicate ballot immediately so we can finish that batch. We have those that need electronic adjudication and those that are fully processed or have write-ins with them. They log that in their paperwork, and then they seal that metal box so that nobody can get into it without damaging that seal. They write the seal number on the piece of paper and put it in there so that anyone opening that box will see this is the seal number, this is the seal on the box, nobody's opened it. So after election day, if everything's gone right, if the ballot reports are good, we will run all of those precincts, or all of those vote centers on election night before we go home. And we make for a long night, so we may not get out till after midnight, hopefully before 6, but as long as we can get them all done, we'll get them all done that night. The next morning, if there are any more early ballots processed for me, we will start counting early again. We will go in, we will reset the machines to all be early ballot tabulators. We will produce a 0 report for the observers to see. We can now produce results reports so they can see at the end of election night, we posted results that said we had X number of earlies, X number of election day or polls, but we can give them the results so they can go through and see, okay, the piece of paper you gave me tonight matches identically, or the piece of paper you gave me this morning matches identically with the piece of paper you gave me last night. We will then run all the early ballots I can in the subsequent days, producing results reports that they can compare at the end of every day and say, you brought in 5,000 more ballots, there were 5,000 more earlies, and they all of your results seem to be according to what you've given me. At some point in time during that section, the recorder's office will get a chance to process the provisional ballots. That's a more involved process, and it includes provisional and conditional provisional, which are people who did not bring their ID to the polls, and they have a set number of days to go to a recorder's office to prove that they were the ones who voted that ballot. So once that is done, once they provide us the provisional ballots, once those are available for me to tabulate, if at all possible, we keep that number to a minimum so I can just convert one of those machines from early voting to a provisional voting machine. We'll run the tabulated ballots through that. That paperwork looks very much the same as the early voting. All ballots that have been verified as valid and prepared for me so that everything that I can tabulate has been run through the machines. I'll run the reports I need. I'll run a backup so we can recover if there's anything we can do. We then do a final LNA test. We again run my in-house test deck through the machines. It should give me the exact results it gave me the first 2 times. The theory is, if everything was working before you started and everything works at the end, it should have been working throughout the whole system. The hand count audit is also a check on that. And of course, with the provisionals, once they have a bag, their first step is to start their paperwork. At the end of it is to finish their paperwork so that we can track everything that's done. Okay, and then I start generating reports for the candidates, but all the tabulation of ballots have been completed at that point.
We get, I get, and anybody else that asks for it, I assume, nice text messages from the recorder's office all the time that says, we've mailed you your ballot, we've got your ballot back, we've got good news, your ballot is in batch A, bag number 7, and it's over for tabulation. When does the ballot become secret?
As soon as they hand it to, well, very shortly after they hand it to us. What we first have to do is when they hand it over to us, or actually talked about a batch of ballots and then trays of ballots. There are actually bundles of ballots. And each bundle of ballot, I think there are about 50 in a bundle, but they have a piece of paper wrapped around that bundle, and that has the name of every voter who should be in that bundle. And our first step is, if every ballot in that bundle corresponds to a name, then we've got everything they thought they sent to us. So each of those bundles will be checked. At that point, we open up the affidavit envelope and then separate the ballots. And at that point in time, we don't know whose ballot is what. Because the openers, all they're doing is they have a stack of ballots that have the end milled off of it. And their first step is to count how many ballots are in that bundle, see if that matches their paperwork. Then they'll pull everything, count how many ballots, well, they count how many envelopes, then they count how many ballots. Those numbers should match. If when they've opened that up, and usually they catch it when they're pulling it out, if there's 2 ballots in that one envelope, they have to stop there and say, we got 2 ballots. So we got one more than we thought we had. Or they pull something out and it's their gas bill. They also have to stop and say, hey, this isn't a ballot. So at that point, they're separated, and then they unfold them and make them nice and flat for me to run through my machines.
But to be clear, after that point in time, there is no way, no how you can identify a ballot and a voter.
And from that step on, we identify where a batch of ballots are in our process. There may be 5,000 ballots in this batch. They are now ready for tabulation. I tabulate 4,900. So for that batch, 5 of the ballots are not included in what I've tabulated until I tabulate those due ballots. So once they're taken out of their envelope, they're now part of a larger batch. We can track, if you go to the recorder and say, oh, I'm in batch D3, the election ran batch D3, I know I marked my ballot correctly because I read the instructions, then you know your ballot was tabulated on that day. Otherwise, you say, well, I was a little quick, or I made a mistake, or I tore it up and put it in the envelope. You wait till that due batch is run, and then you know yours was definitely run.
What happens to the affidavit envelopes?
Those are all boxed. Notation is made on the outside of the cardboard box to say what affidavit envelopes by batch are in that box, so that if at some point in time they want to know this person signed their affidavit envelope and the recorder says it's in this batch and the judge says I want to see it, we can grab that box, they can open it up, dig through it and say, okay, still bundled together, here's that batch. But with the rest of the election material is given to the treasurers for retention for 2 years, roughly 2 years, technically 22 months.
Questions? Comments? Concerns? Can you tell us about the cool little digital clock hanging from the cable tray?
So, tabulation has a camera that streams 24/7. We have a couple of other cameras in there. And we had a concerned citizen who says, how do I know that when nobody's in there, that's not a still image? so we put a digital clock there that'll tick away, so they can see the clock moving and know that, that is actually a live camera and not just a still image of an empty room.
And as much as we'd like to think we know everything about how that room runs, we're open to input from anybody that wants to make it.
Oh yeah, people have given us good suggestions and at times good suggestions, and if we can incorporate them. Someone is fond of saying we have to work with the election laws we have and not the ones we want. So although their suggestion may be good at times, we may not be able to implement them yet. So we always have to fall back to that and see if we're allowed to do what they would like. And I encourage anyone who's got the opportunity to come by and see us processing ballots, so you can see how all of this actually fits together. There's a lot more detail in all of this that you can't cover and that you forget until you're actually there doing it and say, oh yeah, we do this half dozen stuff too, just to make sure our paperwork is correct.
Anything else from anybody? Laura, you have a quizzical look on your face.
I was wondering, how many people work with you in that room?
There are 3 other full-time permanent employees that work with me and can replace me at a moment's notice. But we get about 4 to 10, depending on the size of the election, temporary workers who we train how to run the tabulation and help program the equipment we send to the polls and stuff. So, at the most I have about 13 people. Usually it's more like 6 to 10.
But 3 that could.
Yes, 3. Yeah.
You got the measles or something.
Yeah, there are 2 of them who know, well, 2 of us who know my password, 2 of us who know the other password, other half of the password. So me and 2 others can log in. Any one of them and 2 others can log into the system, so that we're never able to do anything.
Why not have 2 people have to log in instead of one person in 2 parts of the password?
Oh, it's 2 people have to be able to log in, and currently we have the password set up into 2 parts. 2 of us know one part of it, 2 of us know the other. So functionally, all but 2 of us can log in by ourselves. We need one of the other people. We can set it up so that we have, let's see, that would be 4, 7, 8 different user logins, so that I and any one of the others can log in. But you'd have to set up 8 different users, so I and one other person A, I and person B, I and person C, A and C, A and B, that kind of thing. So you would need to create a large number of users with the password split in different ways so that you could do that.
Mr. Stewart?
It's kind of an unusual password approach, if I'm hearing you correctly. It doesn't quite sound like you're sharing credentials or full credentials with somebody else.
Correct.
So that makes me comfortable. But it sounds like you're sharing partial credentials with somebody else, and I'm just not familiar with
This.
another example of that.
There may not be. This had developed over time, where originally there were 2 people authorized to do probation. Any one of those being sick broke the system. So if it was me and 2 other people, so this kind of developed so that there was some redundancy, and the next step would be to create a larger set of user accounts with different passwords to make that less sharing. This was kind of a compromise between the ability to continue to work and restricting security. But no, I understand what you're saying.
If you watch him, David sits down and puts in the user ID and his half of the password, and then gets up and goes and looks somewhere else while somebody else puts in the other half of the password. It's not him standing there looking over somebody's shoulder, so
Yeah.
I can pick up on the keystrokes. It's,
But you know who the other person is, right?
Oh, no.
There's one user ID and 2 people entering a password, so you don't really know who that other person was.
Except whenever we open the cabinet and log in, we have to sign a document saying, or a log that says, I opened it at this date and time, and it was me and it was my partner here who opened that. Point taken, we could look at developing a document to record every time you have to log back into the screen. It's also on camera that we keep a feed of it for 2 years, that we can always go back and say who was there with David in the room. And we try to usually have at least 3 people in the room at any time, because sometimes you need to step out. And you don't, as long as my 3 people and myself, so the 4 of us can watch each other and make sure what we're doing. Or they'll back off away from the workstation if I have to step out and answer a question.
Director Hargrove.
Chairman, I get where Commissioner Cinnamon is going, and yeah, we can look at assigning passwords to individuals so that there is an audit log of who actually logged into the system. And I think that's where you're going. There is no audit log of that one actual person because 2 or 3 people have a half of the same password. Is that where you're going with that?
It's just a curious setup I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right. Any future agenda items that you have, please get them to Vanessa so we can get them. Commissioner Stewart.
Could I refer back to an earlier item? I looked up Real ID in Arizona.
Yes.
It does require the documentation of U.S. citizenship. Nationally, it does not, so it's hard for me, for out-of-state visitors to deal with, but for in-state, thank you.
Yes, and the enhanced ID, there are 5 states that use the enhanced ID, and that also serves as citizenship.
Yeah.
Chair Beckle, I wanted to, I did get the total number of affected voters that are getting the letters, and it's 29,023 voters. We've already received documented proof of citizenship just via email from about 175 of that first batch of voters. Commissioner Stravala asked if I knew a party breakdown. I tried to get it. I don't have access to the database, so I can't look through that right now, but, I will tell you that the original group of about 200,000, the majority of those voters were, registered to the Republican Party. So I'm assuming that that continued through the processing of it, but we can definitely get that number for you.
Thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for May the 16th. I will not be here, so it will be your meeting to run. But get any agenda information or items to Vanessa at least a week or 10 days prior to the meeting so that we can get them posted to the website in a timely fashion. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And hearing no objection, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for your patience in getting through all of the data that we went through today. We still haven't had a 6-hour meeting, which we've done.
Sorry, what?
I said we still haven't had a 6-hour meeting, which we've done in the past.
Well, you know, I was chair of the Pima College Governing Board during the crap storm. We had long meetings that lasted till midnight sometimes. So don't hand me the gavel then. Or I don't want to repeat that, so don't hand me the gavel then.